Welcome, listeners, to Artist Tales, the podcast that features and celebrates artists from different walks of life. I'm your host, Heather Martin, and in this episode, I'm chatting with Paul MacDonald, who's an artist with Parkinson's and based in Yorkshire. Welcome, Paul.
Hello, nice to meet you at last.
Yes, good to meet you at last as well. So we've met through Robin, our friend Robin. So it's really good to have you on this podcast. So tell me a little bit about yourself and the art you do.
I would say that primarily I'm a visual artist working with ink and paper traditionally. And now I'm moving over a little bit more to digital work using these wonderful apps that you have online. But my beginning point is really from the essence of doodling and sketch work, from having a book under your arm and setting out into life and capturing little vignettes of people's lives or little comic moments that I might see between people or objects. And sometimes I record those with photography as well, or video, and sometimes I'm in them as well.
So how did you get started with the painting and the artwork and drawing and stuff and photography?
I think basically as a child, I was very enamored by things that I saw at my school, my junior school. And one of the incidents was my form teacher invited me over to the front of the class, and I wanted to draw something, about dinosaurs or Greek heroes or what we were talking about in the class. And he showed me how to draw a little caveman in the corner of my sketchbook. And it was like magic. It was just like something appearing and disappearing and reappearing before my eyes. And it was so astonishing that I just wanted to do that. It was almost like a Houdini or it was like a magic trick, summoning something into the room. It was beautiful.
So it sounds like you started at quite a young age doing your, at least drawing.
Yes, I think there was always paint pots, utensils and things around at home and also at school. And also outside, I found myself being outside quite a lot. At night, when it was quiet, we had this huge tarmac road that it was very quiet. There was only people parked on the side. And I used to draw what I thought was life-size people and spacecrafts and anything that I'd seen on TV. I would animate it, use a piece of chalk or whatever and mark it out and make a big drawing. So I think I always wanted to get things down on paper.
And how has that evolved over the years? I mean, have you seen your style change?
I think I really haven't changed that much through the years because it's still the same essence of having that imagination. You can start without thinking. You can just start on the page and see how the ink or the pencil is appearing on the page, and it might suggest a body or a form. And that's how I still like to work, in that kind of unraveling, or a line going for a walk. And it initially doesn't have any meaning, and then you can attach meaning to it, or you can invest in it if your vision is held with the pen and the page.
You've had Parkinson's for a number of years now, and how has that influenced or affected your art?
Actually, it's become more of a tool in communication, because I remember quite early on in being diagnosed, about 2 years in, my handwriting was very small. My speech was slow and slurred. I had a tendency to drool. So I kind of used the sketchbook as a way of holding myself together in busy places, so concentrating my energy in, but also allowing myself to look out and pick up things that were attractive or interesting for me. And so it helped not to have to engage too much in conversation. And if people did approach me, then I could open up the sketchbook and they would find themselves in there, or they would recognize something from what I was doing that was common to all. So I think people liked seeing themselves reflected like that.
So what subject matter do you like to draw or paint?
Oh, well, there's always a clown in there somewhere. There's always a fool. There's always an element of innocence peeping through, or like quirkiness or cheekiness, or a character getting into trouble or breaking the rules. I want my work to be expressive, but I also want it to be light. I want it to be refreshing for people to see. And I think, even though I have I think sometimes is a quite difficult and heavy illness, I think that's what keeps me light. The humor, the slightly obscured vision of how life has become now. We're not. I think with people with some illnesses, we're at a completely different pace to everyone else. We're trying to catch up, and we're trying to get everyone else to slow down to our pace.
I was just about to say, it's is it really you catching up, or is it us slowing? It should be slowing down for you, really.
It should be. It should be others slowing down. I think that was helpful, especially in the beginning of having therapy with the Parkinson's, coming to terms with it. That it was. I couldn't just keep telling them lists of things that I'd done or what had gone well with my day or whatever. I had to draw it to make it sound real. And having all those images on the page, myself trying to do some Tai Chi in the garden, or a picture of someone dropping by with a meal or something like that to cheer me up, or, a ray of sunshine drawn on a piece of paper was attractive. When my counsellor came, I was counselled by a nurse from King's College in London, as I was part of a research program at the point. And she, encouraged me to keep going with the drawing. And so each day I would have done a whole diary on a page, and tried to compose it and make it beautiful without rubbing anything out or changing anything. And then my work became simpler, but more colourful. So like a map, really.
So in many ways, it sounds like it's your art is in some ways self-reflective, or how you experience the world, really.
Yeah, and that was part of my work before I got the illness, that I worked with art, improvisational actors and performers and clowns. And so my job after they've done an improvisation was to remember many of the good points and the images and sort of things that were said, and feed those back to the performers so they could have a sense of what they'd just done, and what, if it hadn't been such a great impro, to see where the potential still was in following some of those ideas that were placed there but not picked up on. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed, when I started to put the drawing into that work as well. Yeah, I think I created a new form of feedback.
That sounds really interesting. So tell me more about that. Were they practicing for like the theatre, or what were you capturing?
Yes, my colleague, who gave me a great opportunity to work alongside him with and share skills in La Luna nel Pozzo in Puglia. He has a centre there, which he teaches all walks of life, from people with learning disabilities, physical disabilities, people that come to do yoga. At another time, they come back for a clown workshop, but also plenty actors that want to have that kind of fluidness in their performance, the risk-taking, the enjoyment of being on stage and connecting with an audience. So, I was able to sit next to him and, feed back images that I was seeing and draw them down. And then, I would work on them overnight as well. So when people came down for breakfast, they could look at my sketchbook and find themselves in it. And I would have transformed them into if they were playing a carrot, then I would draw them as a carrot.
What was the reaction to it? What was the feedback that you got from?
The feedback was very nice, because the focus wasn't on me then. It wasn't on me. It was more on the drawings and who was in the picture and what they were doing. And then people's memories would kick in. about the day before or something they did at the beginning. And it was always there out on the table. And if people wanted to add something, they could. And it just was a whole huge relief for me because my Parkinson's has been very varied through the years. I've had great possibilities, when the movement was still good to do things. And other times, have to hunker down and play safe and not go out so much. So, if being surrounded by lovely people in Italy was a really good thing. And now I'm not there able to go now, but I've handed on or inspired others to work in that way. So not just to write notes about things, but to put images alongside them. So it's a quicker way into the recesses of your imagination and memory.
I was just going to say, images, there's something, you've probably summed it up better than I could, but there's something about an image rather than the written word. And, they're very different mediums. And it's not to knock the written word because that can be quite powerful as well. But there's just something about the image that can get into the memory in a different way.
I think so. I think, we can carry a symbol with us that has meaning or potential. And just give you a beautiful example. One of my friends was clowning. She's passed on now, but she was in her 80s. She came with us to Italy. She played very well. Her imagination was very, very light. And she put this branch against the wall. And then she said, "Hospitale," as if she'd just built a hospital like that. Everyone accepted that that was the hospital. It was just a branch leaning against a wall, but it was very funny to see that happen. And the clown's optimism or sense of irreverence or reverence even, she would roll out to carpet and someone would say, "Well, what is it?" And she would say, "Oh, well, it's a panacado." A panacado. She made it into a big kind of Swiss roll, and it's been able to look like that at life that we also attach our imagination to things that are not really there, but we think we see them, and there's no point forgetting it. Let's embrace them, and it's just like child's play of making something, being something, or allowing yourself to play a game with a theme without any kind of need for it to be perfect. A bowl can be a hat, or a scarf can be a river. It's how you want. If you have the inspiration and desire for it to be like that, then great. Life is richer. Sometimes we can do a lot of things without all that stuff that we have.
I agree. And as you were talking, you touched on it, but I was thinking the same of it's like children and their imagination. It's the child play. And it's not to diminish it because there can be something quite powerful in that.
I think if the child has confidence in those things, because often when we grow up and some people are great at offering suggestions in the group and others are not. It doesn't mean to say they don't have ideas. Maybe less confident in bringing them to the front or naming them. So we all have different learning styles or different ways of people accepting. But if you think that the whole of society has been dreamed up, what a building looks like, someone's dreamed that up, they've thought it up, and with help they've built a house or a castle or a car in a certain way. It's all through the imagination, and some of it's frightening and some of it's beautiful.
And that's where art and imagination step in, don't they?
Yes, we go to a gallery and we go, "Oh, I know what that is." "Oh, I don't know what that is." We all have different ways of reading the world.
We do. And one of the frustrations I sometimes have when people ask me about my photography is, "Oh, tell me about it, describe it, explain it to me." And my feeling is, I don't mind giving a little bit of context, but at times, but I much prefer that person to interpret it their way.
Absolutely. We can overthink things or we can overtalk them. Yeah, so again, it was like I was saying about having the sketchbook. It was a kind of way of protecting myself from people talking too much about the Parkinson's or themselves, and knowing when to back off when I was tired and exhausted.
How much of that do you face? How much, I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, how do people interact with you, particularly people who might not know you and your Parkinson's?
It depends on the context. I've had so many varieties of interactions with people, from, standing, struggling to open a juice bottle in a little shop in Wales, where the lady came from the back of the kitchen and came towards me to help me. And she said very, very sweetly, "Oh, let's do this together." And that was an immensely useful thing that she said. She wasn't disempowering me or, making herself superior. She was bringing me back into life as a person who has some abilities, and she had some abilities that were more helpful in that moment to help me. So that helped me ask a little bit more from life and people. But then there's other people that judge you really severely, really quickly, and think, well, it's not so bad. What's your problem? Says, well, I can't get into pubs sometimes because people think I'm drunk. It's happened to me that people think, you can't come in here, you're drunk. It's like, no, this is how I am. So that's frustrating. And people just can't understand that we have different abilities during the day. We appear differently. We're not consistent. So it's like, they look at you and say, well, you're all right today. Well, that's this moment, I'm all right this moment. Don't know what's happening in the next half an hour, but I think it probably will be a downwards trail until the next medicine. So, you have to choose your friends carefully, and because, you can get yourself into some scrapes. You have moments where you're dependent, not independent, and that can be very frightening.
And it sounds like, from what you were saying a bit earlier, that the art can help with that interaction with people. So people are not necessarily focusing on, oh, you have an issue. It's more like, here's the art, and let's let that be the focus.
Yeah, you're great at drawing, and then the Parkinson's element goes away, and people can enjoy what they see, and because I think I've worked really hard to retain my abilities to draw, and at some times of the day, my hands are very stiff and numb, fingers are numb, and I'm trying to struggle on to open an app on my phone or computer, but my fingertip doesn't really interact. Whereas at other points of the day, I can do broad strokes, lots of different lines and colors and cutout shapes. And then, there's another moment coming along. So I've had to adapt to many things in life. And, I think it's great because I feel now I'm willing to say, okay, I don't need to prove that I'm an artist because I can draw a realistic looking giraffe. I can if I have the right moment in time, but we don't need to have a realistic giraffe, do we? We just need a shape that looks like a giraffe. So it's allowing that, what the Picasso was looking for, and Matisse, all these modern artists, they realized that you didn't have to paint every little apple or blossom to get the point across or to get the feeling across. You could be like a child. You can put a few marks down on the paper and they're running. If you bring imagination to it, you see a very alive painting. It's very similar to Lowry. People have very different opinions about Lowry, but he's very treasured and loved because his honesty is not showing a perfect description of a workman. He's showing the whole stream of humanity going to the mills to do their work with their clogs on, and there's dogs in that and kids in that, and the smoke bellowing out, and that people can't say it. I experience that. I know what that is. I've been there, and that's art. Not many people can do that well.
That's true, and the people who are, as you say, the very good artists can, get people to identify or interact with their artwork.
And yeah, they want it. They want to wear it. They want to see it. They want to have it around them, and they want to do art as well.
I was going to ask you, what influences you, or who influences your art?
Well, because of lockdown, couldn't be on the internet very long, so I went out when it was the allowed exercise time, and went into the park, and there was all the graffiti. And I just love, not all graffiti, but some of it is exquisite in the colours, shape, dynamism, characters. It's very much alive, and it's fragile because someone, another group might come and paint over it. It's very transient at times. It's very robust at other times. And sometimes it's a mixture of the new and the crumbling decay of another one underneath. And it's that layering I quite like. So the local artists kept me entertained. And, I would go and visit that and explore some of the movements and shapes. And I made a new kind of, it's not new to me anyway, a way of filming the images. So it's like I was dancing it alongside the graffiti. And then once I'd done that, I would take it into my camera and then mirror it or make it into 4 mirrors and make them come alive. And that helped me sort of look at more pattern work or design. So I had fun with that.
And I love graffiti as well. Like, as you say, the exquisite stuff, the stuff that's really good. Because there's something I find organic and it's living, like you've just described, of, it's very transient, very fragile. It could be, it can evolve over time, as stuff is added or crumbles away, or even, and councils are really good at painting over it.
Yeah, it's a very good way of seeing how life is vulnerable, but also, you're bold for a time and then suddenly you're not there. Like a character in your life, you made an impact and then you go away.
Yeah, so nothing's ever really permanent, to be honest.
And some of my paintings are very much like that. I think also because of my condition, I tend to keep painting until there's nothing left. I tend to cover up what I've done. But those kind of artists inspire me because they're not going to grieve too much losing their work. They're just going to do another one.
From what I'm hearing, it's almost like a life cycle of your art then.
Yeah, you put on parts of it. You keep on it, you document, and it's your history. So I have all my work photographed at certain points, and because of the nature of my computer gallery, they just pop up now and again, and I see something from 5 years ago, and I might just pull it out, cut it off a bit, and print some layers on it. So it's like rocks coming up from the ground. Things are always slowly in the background moving, turning over. So I don't think there will be like one defining painting. I don't think I will manage it. Not to hang on too much. I know some artists that they always put out their best pieces, and mine have gone under the paint now, and they've been rolled over with paint and scrubbed down and cut up and stuck together. And
what I'm hearing is, in a way, you're a bit like a graffiti artist of, it's very transient, it comes and goes.
Yeah, and it's nice to have an end point. Sometimes I had an exhibition earlier this year, which our mutual friend Robin was at, and then he took up the next slot of the venue. But I decided to put an exhibition out there, even though since then, quite a few of them I've painted over. And it was interesting to see what people like. They like the paintings, but they also like really simple T-shirts designs that I made that had done just in preparation that perhaps I wouldn't end up with no paintings because of being too busy scraping them away. So they were like the backup. But in the end, we had both, which was great. And I was very, very pleased with that event.
So that touches probably on one of the questions I'm planning to ask you, actually, is, so you've talked a little bit about past projects and what you've done, but do you have any upcoming projects that you're thinking about, or do they just kind of come a bit more freely?
It's both. People might ask me to do a little project and I might invest a bit too much energy in it before I've given them what I I think they're asking for might have already evolved it into something else. So, and then, I've got colleagues who invite me to present my work, and I never like to put something too old out there. So I always push myself into a new vein with trying a new technique or different materials. Or sometimes there's a theme that's building, and I don't quite recognize what it is until, a few weeks before the show, and then there it is. But I let myself be influenced by what people ask of me, what they want, what they're into.
Great. So it sounds like there are probably you have things on the cards coming up in future, but you're open to things as well, which, I quite like, because, so I think my view is it's planning, but also being open to things, because you never know when serendipity comes in.
Exactly. And that's what I love about life is, somebody pops along and you connect. You decide to do a little dance in the square, or you go off and draw together, or meditate in the forest, or whatever it is, that you seize the moment. And it is a moment because you might never repeat it. But not to just talk about things in life, but do things, really dare to do things. And I think that's one of the things that Parkinson's given me as a gift, is like, time is of the essence. Don't wait for tomorrow to do what you think you need to do. Do it today. If you think you're a writer, write today. If you think you're an artist, draw something, put it in a frame, or sculpt it, or glue it together and bang it on a wall. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you have something at the end of the day that you didn't have before. I've been very naughty, quite naughty character, really. Often because I'm kind of a bit wayward in my movement because of the medicines that I take, and rather than people sort of try to hide that from people, I try to embrace it, and I will dance. You'll be the first one to get up to dance or something like that, and encourage someone else to dance.
So yeah, for you, the movement, you're working with the movement rather than against it.
Yeah, sometimes, against it, because you're sitting at a table, you're out at a restaurant with people, and you don't want to prong a chip down the line, which you do sometimes. And sometimes you just have to leave the table and go off and allow yourself to simmer down. But yes, in the dance, I think I do go with quite a lot, because otherwise you feel that you're like swimming without water. You're doing all the effort, you're not getting anywhere. It can be a lot of energy.
I can imagine, and I hope you have more dances than not.
I do, yes.
Oh, good. Well, thank you, Paul. It's been really lovely chatting with you today, and it's been really interesting to hear about you and your art, and your Parkinson's, and how you actually use your Parkinson's with your art. And
and being prepared for the future, that you will have to adapt. You can't moan the day it comes when you say, I can't draw anymore, I can't speak anymore. You've got to keep finding that positive thing that you can do. What can you do to contribute to life? And that the disease doesn't take over, that you have some elements of freedom in that. Yeah, I think I've said all I need to say.
Great. Thanks, Paul. You're amazing, and certainly an inspiration. So thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Lovely to speak to you. I'm really glad we did this. Excellent. Thank you.
Same here. I'm glad we did it as well. So thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode with Paul. I hope you enjoyed it. More information about Paul, as well as this podcast, can be found in the episode notes. If you're able to, please rate and review the podcast in the podcast apps. And please also spread the word. In the next episode, I speak with Jordan Blake, who's a photographer and musician in London, England. Jordan also runs a social enterprise. Here's a short clip of her conversation.
So in terms of photography, I'd say that it's easy to see that I work with a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds. But one thing that I feel like I fall short on within my photography is that sometimes I don't necessarily have a concept behind it, but more I'm just capturing the moment of it. So when it comes to wanting to have like a deep meaning behind the photo, it's not so much that I had an idea beforehand, but it's rather that I'm just in that present moment, I'm taking a picture of what I see or what that person chooses to show me in that sense. So it's always more just going with the flow than having like a deep-rooted meaning behind it.
I look forward to you joining me in the next episode with Jordan.